Welcome to Monkey Business. I'm your host, Ron Eckelbarger. Today we're going to talk about the Scopes monkey trial, as it was called, that happened in July of 1925 in Dayton, Tennessee. Yes, the Scopes trial was all about evolution. Now, the concept of evolution did not begin with Darwin, but he's the one that made it sound plausible with the whole natural selection thing. So, what were those effects of Darwinism? Well, by implication, the accuracy of the Bible was questioned. Okay, did God really create or what? It totally reversed the perceptions of the relation of science to the Christian faith. You can see that that's a quote from George Marsden. The fundamentalists, after Prohibition, said, what is the next big cause for which we need to fight? Well, that became the Anti-Evolution Crusade. Certain states, like for instance, Tennessee, there you can see on the screen, the anti-evolution law in 1925, which made it a misdemeanor, punishable of a fine of $100 to $500 to teach evolution in public schools. And this is where the fundamentalists said, we're going to draw the line. This is where they were trying to pick a fight. Well, the modernists were very glad to say, hey, we'll pick a fight with you. Let's take this to the courts. And so the ACLU decided, all right, we need a test case. And in fact, in this article from the New York Times on June 23rd, then said the Civil Liberties Union and New York Society offered to furnish the defendant with funds for the defense and with an attorney. So the ACLU was picking a test case, and they found one in Dayton, Tennessee. Now, nobody expected this to happen there in Dayton, Tennessee, but there were some things going on behind the scenes that made Dayton an appealing town. First of all, there was hardship in the area, so we need an infusion of cash, and that got the conspirators together. The Dayton conspirators, as they're known. There's George Rhea, the school superintendent, Walter White, Clay Green, and the drugstore owner, Fred Robinson. They got together and said, hey, we could get some money if we could use this test case and have a trial here in Dayton. It'll be a sensational thing. People will come, and who knows? We'll get ourselves on the map and maybe make up for the mine closing here in town. Well, that's even said here in a newspaper article where they interviewed for the New York Times John Scopes. He said the test case, the professor said, that the professor is Scopes, originated in a drugstore conversation some weeks ago when some of the Dayton citizens were discussing the Tennessee law prohibiting the teaching in public schools of any theory of creation contrary to the biblical account. Scopes stated that Rhea asked if he would be willing to submit to arrest to test the law, and he consented. So, we've got the conspirators. Now we've got Scopes. 24 years old, single, perfect test case. He really had nothing to lose. He was a high school science teacher and a coach. But it brought in some really big heavy hitters, which I guess is what the conspirators wanted. William Jennings Bryan, the great commenter. He had run for the presidency of the United States on the Democratic ticket 3 times, 1896, 1900, and 1908. He was Wilson's Secretary of State from 1912 to 1915. This guy was a huge name, and he was a fundamentalist. He believed in the Bible. So he said, I'm going to come down and help the prosecution on this, which whether they wanted his help or not, I don't know, but who's going to refuse a guy of this stature, right? So, for the other side, Clarence Darrow, he was an avowed agnostic. In comes Clarence Darrow and William Jennings Bryan, and they are the ones who are going to try the case. Big names, heavy hitters, and it did bring some notoriety to Dayton, Tennessee. You also had H.L. Mencken. He was a columnist for the Baltimore Sun. One of his quotes is, Homo Bubiens is a fundamentalist for the precise reason he is uneducable. all these people descended upon Dayton, Tennessee, and it caused a media circus. John Scopes is quoted as saying, Ringling Brothers or Barnum and Bailey would have been hard-pressed to produce more acts and sideshows and freaks than Dayton had during that trial. Well, what happened during the trial? Well, it finally started on Friday, July 10th, 1925. The first day was simply jury selection there at the Rhea County Courthouse in Dayton, Tennessee. The trial lasted for 7 days. The big day finally came when Darrow called William Jennings Bryan to the stand. And I'm sure last week you watched the reenactment of that on our assigned video, the God in America from PBS. So they did a reenactment of that verbatim, and it was exactly like you saw. Bryan was willing to take the stand, more than willing, because he thought, hey, I'm going to cut Darrow down a few notches. But Darrow got Bryan to say, hey, well, it could have been millions of years. God created, yes, but it doesn't have to be a literal 7 days. Well, what happened then, because Bryan embarrassed himself and embarrassed fundamentalists, and everybody heard about it through all of the newspapers and the radio, the judge ended up expunging Bryan's testimony as irrelevant. So it was expunged, but everybody, we still have it, right? We listened to it. The defense declined to deliver a closing summation. And so since the defense declined, then Bryan was not able to deliver his big speech at the end, which kind of put him out. The jury took only 9 minutes to find Scopes guilty as charged. He had broken the law, and that was really what was the main thing at stake. The reason that it took 9 minutes for the jury is because the courtroom was so packed, it took 9 minutes for the jury to get to the jury room, turn around, and say, all of them say guilty, turn around and get back to their places. That's how quick the decision was. What happened then in the aftermath of all of this monkey business? Well, Bryan died just a few days after the trial ended on July 25th during an afternoon nap. He was staying with some people in Dayton, Tennessee. There was no sustained economic boost for Dayton, so the people came, trial was over, the people left. They made some money during the time, but that was it. The fundamentalists were branded, and this is the big takeaway here, the fundamentalists were branded as ignorant, intolerant, backward, prejudiced hicks. This was where fundamentalism really lost a big battle. It was at this time, really, after the Scopes trial, that fundamentalists started saying, look, if you're going to make us look like homobubians, as H.L. Mencken labeled them, then fine. You don't want us in the public circle. We will retreat. We'll retreat from your colleges. We will retreat from political activities. And they did.